my real pleasure right now to introduce the next speaker, James Underhill. James is a professor at the University of Normandy in Rouen, France. He's a linguist and a practicing translator from French and Czech. And he researches into Humboldt, into linguistic worldviews, into the poetics of translation. And he's the founder and director of Rouen Ethnolinguistic projects that you can find online, the REP. And I also have a very personal connection to James and Marco, because it was through James I actually met Marco. So it's a very special moment for me personally here. James, the floor is yours, the cyberspace is yours, I suppose. So James is online, ready to answer questions. If
James seems to be online twice. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that's good.
That was
Yeah, Marco.
Yes, James, thank you very much for that. I mean, obviously it was a kind of a counter position to what I exposed, and I think I have indeed somehow kind of proven you wrong in some of your statements already. But now it's a bit difficult to really enter into a real discussion on that. What I want to ask now, maybe, in the couple of minutes that we have for this, is to ask whether you don't think that this kind of lack of resonance, as you say, of the term in English is due to Anglophone tradition of empiricism, of pragmatism, where this kind of dimension is kind of, traditionally rather set aside and not that much developed and cultivated.
Thanks a lot, Marco. Can everybody hear me?
It's fine.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Thanks a lot, Marco. Yes, of course, I realized actually Marco told me that it went on too long and that we wouldn't have enough time for questions. We've had an ongoing talk with Marco and a sort of frustrated dialogue on this question. Certainly, in your answer to your question, no, certainly no. I think this would be bad anthropology to assume, to project a kind of empiricism, to say in English they don't have our concept. No, what I think you're doing, Marco, is you're looking at the German concept, taking the German concept as a starting point and as an essential concept. I think you're ultimately a realist, and I think I'm a nominalist, and I think that's a sort of fundamental sort of not disagreement, but lack of understanding in the way we're trying to connect and we're not connecting. You're suggesting that, oh, well, Abyss doesn't have this, so there must be something lacking in English. No, there are many, many concepts, and what you're looking for is not found in the Abyss. That would be my thing. So basically we have to, from my point of view, we have to say, are we going to take the concept as the starting point, which seems to be your way of working? It's the way that Kaslan would work. Or do you take the keyword as the starting point, which is what Adam, Bartminski, Wierzbicka, and I would do, is to take the word as the starting point. How does the word work within the worldview? Those are very different ways of working.
I see your point, but then what do you have to offer in the English tradition? Something which could cover this kind of field or this notions that are covered in other languages, or let's say now in German, since we for this kind of dimension, is what are the concepts you can suggest?
Well, there are the things that, if I was to look at what you've had so far, I would say something like expansive, or the great wide width or broad breadth or horizons. That would take us into something potentially interesting from what we've heard from Estonian. For you, I think you're very much a Nietzschean in this question, and Nietzsche will work in terms of verticals, and it doesn't matter whether he goes deep or whether he goes high. He can be on the Swiss mountains saying, I skip from mountaintop to mountaintop, or he goes into the les profondeurs, the depths. That's where you really belong in your way of working. And I understand that's interesting, but you will not get that with a bass. You'll get that with the depths of your understanding. It can be depths of grief, it can be negative, it can be traumatized, it can be phoenix renewing itself, and it can move from the depth to the height with no contradiction. There's no contradiction between going deep and going high. So I think that's where what you're looking for. We simply don't need the abyss to do what you want to do. You want to have one hold-all concept which will have all these different facets. And unfortunately, what you've done to me is you've caged me off into a role that doesn't correspond to my way of working. I usually work as a comparativist, working between languages, and you've said, no, we want you to do the English. So I've restricted myself to the English. And for me, the concept is a little more disappointing than the concepts that you're dealing with. Does that make English disappointing, empirical, limited, more prosaic? Not from my point of view.
Okay, if there's no other urgent, I mean, we could continue in a very long time. I think we'll do that on the phone, James. But
Sure.
now we should have some time also for coffee break. So I would suggest that we stop here if there's no other real urgent question for the moment. We have 20 minutes. Please help yourself to coffee and cakes. And I hope that over the time of this conference, we will get back to certain points that are already raised now in this first session. So
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah.